We continue our journey through Soul Feast by Marjorie Thompson on how different ways of engaging in the practice of prayer. And we're going to be completing a section on different modes of prayer by speaking to practical matters. First, a quote from the Cistercian monk Thomas Merton. "The great thing is prayer, and prayer itself. If you want a life of prayer, the way to get it is by praying. Start where you are, and you deepen what you already have." The discussion of prayer would be incomplete without some attention to the very practical matters such as time, place, and of course the irritation of distractions. There is no substitute for giving time to the practice of prayer. Like most anything, we learn best by doing it. But the issue of time is a formidable barrier for many of us. We live in a culture that equates constant activity with meaning. Time is often a commodity which we are least willing to give up without tangible compensation. We all make choices about the use of our time. The way we use our time reveals our priorities, much as we would like to think otherwise. If I were to learn that I only had 6 months to live, or maybe even 6 weeks, my use of time would no doubt change significantly. If our relationship with God is really important to us, we might make time to pray. It might mean going to bed earlier in order to get up earlier. It might mean taking a portion of our lunch hour for solitude. It could involve swapping childcare with a friend for a period each day to have some time to yourself. It certainly means claiming the time that is thrust upon us when we're sick, or we're stuck in traffic, or waiting at that red light on Harrison. Most of us could learn to waste less time over inconsequential matters. And here I'm speaking pretty much to Facebook or our cell phones, the things that distract us, so that we would have more time for what is important. Developing the habit of regular prayer is like building any new habit into our life. It takes commitment, creativity, and of course, perseverance. Now, none of this will happen unless we desire a deeper relationship with the Lord. Desire for God is fuel for prayer. When we fall in love, we readily set other things aside in order to secure coveted time to be with our beloved. How many friends have said that old, "Well, I never see so-and-so again since they started dating this person"? Of course, it should be no different with God. In choosing a time for prayer, it is important to take personal rhythms into account. Some of us are morning people. Some are night owls. Some experience peak energy in the middle of the day. Excuse me. God deserves some of the best time of our day, not the dregs. It is easier, especially for beginners, to pay attention to God in solitude and relative quiet. For some, this poses a creative challenge. I've known people who took early morning walks out on the trails for prayer. Others have learned to shut out the noise around them by entering the inner sanctuary of their heart. Some families, and I think this is a great creative idea, identify a particular spot within their house, a chair or a corner, that entitles its occupant for quiet and solitude. Some have literally turned a spare closet into a prayer closet. When you have found your place for prayer, sanctify it through frequent use. Make it sacred space. You may want to arrange a few symbols of divine presence and beauty in it, whether they are pictures, whether it's a cross, maybe a candle. Remember, you are not a disembodied spirit. Pay attention to your body. Bring it into your prayer. Use it as part of prayer so that it can be a support rather than a distraction. Don't overlook the act of kneeling. Give yourself permission to experiment with these different postures and gestures. Maybe your hands folded in front of you. Maybe your hands up in the air. Finally, there is the matter of distractions that will inevitably surface in prayer. This is a quote from Robert Farrisee. "I can be praying and find my mind on another matter, on someone who has hurt me, on a problem coming up. This kind of distraction indicates what is not integrated into my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I put the matter into his hands, turning the distraction itself into a prayer. Outside distractions are often easier to handle. When the noises of our civilization or nature intrude, as they inevitably do despite our best efforts to create solitude and quiet, it is best simply to accept them and return to your prayer intention. Inner distraction, however, is much more difficult. Saints throughout the centuries have offered colorful descriptions of how the mind, left to its own devices, functions like, and I quote here, monkeys jumping around in banana trees or a swarm of mosquitoes buzzing in all directions. The psychological term is free association. If you've ever tried to sit in contemplative or meditative prayer before, in quiet and solitude, you'll know how challenging it is to keep your focus and attention from drifting into 100 different places. This is precisely why you need a simple word, a phrase, or an image to help you focus, to concentrate on God's presence. Remember that certain kinds of prayer, prayers of thanksgiving, confession, or supplication, give the mind a train of thought to focus on, whereas listening and contemplative prayer tend to generate more inner distraction. Be prepared for distractions and be patient with yourself when they come. Everybody experiences these distractions, no matter how long or how, quote, good you are at these practices. If you try to fight them head on, the attention that you give them in the fighting of it will actually make them stronger. It is better to simply note that you have wandered from your focus and gently return your attention to God. I've heard one mystic speak about this process of letting the distractions go as if prayer was a river, and the distractions are like boats that come floating down your river. You observe them, you see them come, they attract your attention for a quick moment, and then you let them float right back down the river. Another image here would be clouds moving across the sky. Persistent thoughts, however, may require closer examination. Do they represent something you need to confess? A person whom you have a damaged relationship with and need to be reconciled to? A situation that may call for your attention and maybe a response? There's a Jewish tradition that sees distraction in prayer as blemished deeds in our lives that crowd their way into the time of prayer in expectation of a blessing. Might this description of these distractions be true for you? The most important thing is to keep praying, even if it feels artificial or forced at first, and expect to learn as you go in the process. Have grace for yourself. Nobody does anything well at first. No matter how long you've been doing it, you will continue to run into barriers and obstacles. And my friends, this in itself is part of the practice of letting go in prayer. Learning to have grace and to have forgiveness for yourself. So experiment with different forms of prayer, but keep a balance between thanksgiving and supplication, between confession and intercession, between speaking and listening, between communication and communion. And God will bless whatever offering you make from the heart with commitment and sincerity. The more you give yourself to prayer, the more life you will find in it. May God continue to bless your prayer with His presence. Amen.